you a righteous man, Estelle?
I'm not a righteous man, no.
Not?
I
I'm sure there's a
definitely
part of the
not.
Bible that says a righteous man's prayers are powerful and effective. So I was kind of hoping you're a righteous man and that your prayers
A
would be
righteous
powerful and
man, but
effective for my country.
I might qualify as a woman, but definitely not a man.
Okay, our purpose for the morning is to look at some diagramming techniques. I mentioned a few weeks back a little app called Bible Arc that provides quite phenomenal tools for a free software regarding various types of diagramming. One of the ones is sentence or grammatical diagramming, which is ostensibly a way of showing the grammatical relationships between words. Craig asked about this a little while ago, so I'm going to give you guys a bit of a tutorial on sentence diagramming, and we'll apply it to some Greek. So if you give me just a moment, I'm going to replace my face with something far more attractive, hopefully, a blank screen. Lepete?
Letter?
Just tell me if my cursor is pointing at the word read as you see it. No,
Nine?
you know what? I'm going to play this safe. This extend screen I simply cannot get right. For some reason, it seems to be above my tech capacity. All right. My cursor pointing at the word read now.
No.
No, Eucharisto. So we're looking at diagramming here. And essentially what we are wanting to diagram is any passage. So I didn't have one planned, but let's say we take John 1 verse 18 as an example.
Kevin, not everyone was in the class when we used Bible Arc last time, so maybe it would be helpful to them if you can just explain that it's not Bible Arc.
Well, it's BibleArc.com. It's a free app that provides tools for different types of diagramming. So one of the diagramming types is sentence or grammar diagramming. That's what we're going to work with. It relies on these little gadgets on the right-hand side, which I will explain in a moment. All right, so the basic idea is to lay out the relationships between elements of grammar in a sentence. So if I start here, this little guy, everything works on horizontal lines. Words go on horizontal lines. This little guy that has the vertical line that traverses the horizontal line is used to separate subject from verb. Okay, so we're going to put the subject of a sentence there on this one, and we're going to put the verb to the right of it. So this is our main component of a sentence. Subject and verb separated by those two. And then this guy is used, in other words, an extension of our baseline with a line that does not traverse the main line is used to demonstrate the direct object. If not all of these parts are always present, but where they are, this is how they are shown. So we put the direct object, and okay, so I want to move that a little bit, and that is it. You guys still seeing this? You should be seeing a line diagram with the words subject, verb, and direct object.
That is clear on my screen, Kevin, but I can't see the little box here on the right-hand side with the lines in.
You can't see the little box.
I don't know what you call that thing, but it's there where you get the line.
Yeah, I know what you mean, Alice. It's called a components thing. I'm getting frustrated with technology these days. Let's try. I think we should go back to the dark ages and go and sit under a tree and tell stories.
There you go.
Can you see that?
Yes, it's here.
Okay, well, let's hope it remains clearish. All right, so what we've got essentially over here is a subject. The main parts of the sentence go on a horizontal line. We're going to have subject, verb, and direct object. The subject and verb are separated by the line that traverses. So this little guy here, subject goes to the left, verb to the right of that. If we were doing Hebrew, it would be the other way around because the direction is right to left in Hebrew, and then the direct object goes on the other side of it. Okay, so those are your standard building blocks of a sentence. Everything else modifies one of those components. The ambiguous one is the indirect object. There are two ways that you might show an indirect object. One is to separate it as a fourth primary element on the right-hand side of the direct object. So we could mark out indirect object thus. The other way it can be shown is using this guy and shown as subordinate to the verb. So this little one with a stripe and a line that goes just beyond that stripe is also used to show an indirect object. So you've got two options there. Okay. All right, so we might have four elements in our main part of our sentence: subject, verb, direct object, indirect object. Can you see my mouse pointing at those? Hope so. And a second option for the indirect object. Okay, now I want to take that off. So that's our basic structure. Now every other component of a sentence is going to modify one of these. It's going to modify either the subject or the verb or the direct object or the indirect object. Now they use, if there's a non-verbal modifier, meaning a modifier that doesn't have a verb in it, such as a prepositional phrase or a genitive noun or something, we would use these guys. The stripe goes right to left diagonally, and so we would put on this, for instance, prepositional phrase or possibly a genitive. Anything that is modifying an element but does not have a verb in it of any sort is diagrammed using this. Okay, so this could, for instance, be a genitive or an adjective or just about anything else. If a modifier has a non-finite verb, it is diagrammed using this guy. Okay, now I need to be able to manipulate my diagram a bit, but I'll just take this guy off. Okay, so if it has a non-finite verb, why don't you want to grab? Oh, wrong one. It's using this. Right, so this would be a non-finite verb, by definition, an infinitive or a participle. We diagram using the direct line. We call that a verbal. It's not fully a verb, but it is part of a verb. And if something has a full verb, in other words, it would be a subordinate clause, not that one. So this is a second clause that has its own finite verb. It is diagrammed using this. Includes a finite verb. So these are the basic building blocks. There's much more to this, but these are the basic building blocks of it. So what I'm going to do now is take exercise 11 of Mounce's workbook and look at some of the examples. So if we start with exercise 11, I've done number 1. What we have effectively is ego ebaptisa imas. I have baptized you. I have baptized you. Let's take that off. Udati, in water or with water. The dative is modifying the verb ebaptisa, and so is diagrammed as if it were an indirect object. I'm getting feedback from someone's camera. It's either Johan or Hector, so please won't you mute? Just mute yourself and then unmute yourself when you want to speak. Mute buttons are at the top of your screen. So ego is the subject, I. Evaptisa, have baptized, is the verb, and umas is the direct object. So you can see those diagrammed in the traditional way, where we have the subject on the left, the verb just to the right of the vertical line, and the direct object again further to the right. Udati, water, diagrammed as an indirect object using one of the two methods that I showed you. Now this sentence has 2 clauses joined by de. De is a coordinating conjunction. So we've diagrammed the 2 clauses essentially as 2 separate sentences or clauses, and we've joined them by de. You can see how I've illustrated that. Our second clause, avtos or autos, he, baptise, will baptize, umas, you, prepositional phrase, because a prepositional phrase does not include a finite verb, it is diagrammed using one of these lines that slants right to left. We put the prepositional phrase there, and the object of the preposition is a noun. It's diagrammed exactly like a direct object was above. Hagio is an adjective modifying pneumati. So it's subordinate to what? Answer, pneumati. We demonstrated subordination exactly the same way as we would a prepositional phrase or a genitive. One of the lines going this way, and hagio being an adjective. So the second clause, he will baptize you, prepositional phrase. Prepositional phrases invariably modify the verb, en pneumati, and then hagio is an adjective telling us something about pneumati. Which pneumati is it? It's not an evil spirit, but the Holy Spirit. Questions? No questions. Craig, do you have Mounce's workbook handy?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell me question 11.6, which verse is it based on?
Just finding the place. It doesn't actually say, it just has question 6, but it doesn't tell you what it's...
At the end of the chapter, there's normally a thing that says references, and it'll tell you which verses they're based on.
Okay.
It's Matthew 23:8.
Matthew 23:8. Thank you, Eucharisto. So let's do Matthew 23 verse 8. So what I'll do now is just do a few of these as live examples. And does it start from his? From Hesgar estin himon hodidaskalos?
Yes.
I'm guessing that it does. All right, so we take the clause. You'll see at the bottom of my screen that the Greek text has been presented to me. Heis gar estin humon hodidaskalos pantes de humis adelphu estin. Este, sorry. So essentially we've got two clauses. Heis gar, for one, estin is humon of you, hodidaskalos, the teacher. Pantes, all, de, but, so but all, humes, you, adelphoi, brothers, este, you are. So we take the two clauses one by one, starting with the first clause. Heis means one. Gar is a conjunction that joins the entire sentence to what goes before, so it stands alone. If I click on the word, you'll see I've highlighted it at the bottom, and I then go and drag any of these elements. It'll automatically put my word on the line that I choose. So I'll put gar for now. It sometimes gets the wrong side of a line, but nevertheless. Alright, the subject is heis, one, and the verb is estin. So I'm going to select those two, and then go and choose my primary line, which is always this guy. You'll see there it's put heis at the bottom. I don't want it at the bottom. I want it at the top. Right, so what I've done essentially is I've put the subject, heis, first on the left-hand side of my baseline, and the verb estin to the right. So heis estin, one is. This sentence is abnormal because it doesn't have a direct object. It has a predicate nominative. If it had a direct object, I would put one of these here, and I'd put the direct object where my arrow is pointing. Can you see my arrow pointing just to the right-hand side of estin?
No.
Okay, so it's showing correctly. But we don't have a direct object. What we have is a predicate nominative. So there's a very simple little toy for distinguishing a direct object from a predicate nominative. Instead of using the vertical line over here, it uses this little one with the slanted line, and we're going to put the predicate nominative this side of the slanted line. The predicate nominative in this case is hodidaskalos. Keep your articles with the noun that they belong to. Some versions of this diagramming don't, but that gets very complex and confusing. So that's our base sentence here. Heis, one, estin is hodidaskalos, the teacher. Humon is a genitive modifying hodidaskalos. It doesn't have a noun, so we diagram it using this. And we show that it is a modifier of didaskalos by linking it to didaskalos. So that's our base sentence for the first part of our clause here. Heis estin hodidaskalos humon, one is your teacher. We then have a second clause joined by de. De is, again, our conjunction, so I'll just move him there for now, or better still, I'll leave him out until later. Right, pantes, humes, adelphoi, este. Humes, the pronoun is the subject, este, you are is the verb. So once again, I'm going to choose those two, and I'm going to choose my baseline. This time it's managed to put the pronoun in the right place. Okay, so humes este, you are. Again, the word estin was going to take a predicate nominative, not a direct object. So in order to show that, we will put adelphoi, which is the predicate nominative, on our slanted line. So that's our base sentence for the next one. Humes este adelphoi, you are brothers. So one is your teacher. You are brothers. All right, what about pantes? Well, pantes here is an adjective that's modifying humes, you, which you? All of you. It's not a verbal modifier, so I'm going to show it using a line slanting to the right, and I'm going to show that it's subordinate to humes by putting it there. And sometimes it likes to put stuff below the line. I suggest we keep stuff above the line. Let's move that to the right. So you can neaten this up in terms of its display once you're done, but essentially that's the sentence. You are brothers. Pantes is an adjective modifying humes, so it's subordinate to that. It's not verbal, it's an adjective, so it has the line that slants that way. All right, what do we do then with de? Well, essentially what we got here are two equivalent clauses. They're actually contrasted, so we'll just join them by a dotted line, and you can put de somewhere proximate to that line to show that the relationship between the two clauses is carried by de. Questions? No questions?
Kevin, I see that you've put both lines right. Well, it's parallel with each other. When will you put the one line a little bit to the right or to the left?
The one clause, you mean?
Clauses, sorry.
These are coordinate clauses, meaning they're joined by a coordinate conjunction in de, and they're self-standing clauses, so they're shown on equal level. This is sentence diagramming, so it essentially operates at the level of diagramming sentences and clauses. It's not optimal for showing the relationship between clauses in terms of how the thought of a paragraph flows. The point is for you to understand what role is every word playing in the sentence. Other types of diagramming are better for showing which sentences are logically developing, which ones and in what way. This little app has tools for all the variations, but this one is mostly diagramming sentences or clauses, and it's not optimal for showing the relationship between clauses. It's optimal for showing the relationship between words within a clause or sentence. All right, let's do the next one. Somebody tell me.
Can I just ask the guard at the top, do you join that or do you just leave it by itself?
Up to you. There's no hard and fast rule. What you need to recognize is that gar, in a sense, governs this entire sentence. So you want to try and link it, you can. I quite often have, but it's not critical to do so. Okay? It's kind of free floating up there. Okay, 11.7. Just tell me what text. Albertos?
Sorry, just unmuting. It's Mark 2:5.
Mark 2:5. There we go. All right, so I've chosen it. You can see it brings up the text at the bottom of the screen using NA28. So quite nifty that they've got rights for NA28 here. And is it the whole sentence, Bert? Can somebody tell me if we got the whole sentence in our exercise?
It's the whole sentence.
The whole sentence. All right, from Kai idon ho Jesus all the way to Hai hamartiai. Polikala. Polikala. So let's take the whole sentence. We're going to start. So we've got Kai idon, and when he saw or having seen ho Jesus, Jesus. I'll highlight them as we go. Ho Jesus is Jesus. Ten pistin auton, the faith of them. Lege, he said, to paralytico, to the paralytic. Teknon, teknon is a vocative, although it looks like it's something else, but it's basically saying, child, afientai, su, they are forgiven, su hai hamartiai, your sins. So we've got two clauses again. The second one here is in direct speech. So it's a new sentence that's part of direct speech. Fairly easy to identify. Our subject is ho Jesus, and our verb is lege in the main clause. So let's take those two elements. They form our initial baseline. So we're going to have ho Jesus lege. Jesus says. There's no direct object of lege here. That's pretty common because when you've got direct speech being introduced, Jesus says to someone, the direct speech, what is actually said is logically the direct object of the verb. So the logical direct object of says is your sins are forgiven as a whole clause. Okay. So what we have is an indirect object. I'm going to keep it on the main line this time. So if you want, you can do this when there's no direct object or when something's missing. If you want, you can represent the placeholder by the letter X, just to say this component is missing. All right, and then I can put an indirect object. I'll use this way of showing it. There we go. So essentially, there's our base clause. Jesus says to the paralytic. What do we make of idon, ten pistin, auton? You haven't learned it yet. Idon is a participle, and it gives an action that in some sense modifies the verb. And in this case, it means having seen their faith. There being the faith of the four guys carrying him on the stretcher in the context of the story. You'll notice I've left out the kai. I would diagram kai like I would gar. But idon is a participle. A participle is a half verb. And we show it modifies the verb. We show it like that. It takes a direct object, which we'll show in the normal way of showing a direct object. So it's the direct object of idon on this line that doesn't traverse the horizontal. Auton is a genitive modifying pistin. It's whose faith? Their faith. Genitives are shown as subordinate to the noun they modify using one of those. So there's our introductory clause. Ha Jesus, subject, lege, no direct object, to paralytico, to the paralytic. Idon, when he saw, ten pistin, the faith, auton of them. Katalambanete, understand? Questions about that part? No questions. Polikala. All right. Now we've got a second part here. Teknon afientai su hai hamartiai. So this is a vocative. It's an address, something addressed to someone. We'll put that pretty much like a conjunction. We'll lift it up above the clause that it fits to. I'll do that at the end. Our main clause here is your sins are forgiven. Hai hamartiai is the subject. Afientai are forgiven is the direct object. So we've got a second clause. Hai hamartiai afientai. Su is a genitive. It modifies hai hamartiai. Whose sins? Your sins. Genitives are diagrammed thus. Come on. This thing auto-aligns stuff, usually pretty well, but sometimes you do want to put it a bit differently to where they want. All right, and then teknon is a vocative, so it's telling us who's being addressed here. Vocatives you can put above the sentence where the address is, basically on their own line. So much like a conjunction, if you want to, you can link it. Thus, something like that. All right, now, how do we show this whole thing, this direct speech in relation to everything else that we have in our clause? Well, there are a few ways to do that. One practical one is to illustrate that the direct speech actually holds the place of, actually holds the place of the direct object here. Okay, so we could take one of these dudes, put it there, and what we are going to try and show is that this entire thing is direct speech more or less in the position of? Can't get that to behave. Okay. More or less in the position of direct object in the clause. So that's one way that we could try and work the direct speech into this. Questions? Is it starting to make sense, or is it still as confusing as listening to a Zoomer speech?
For me, it makes perfect sense, but I've played with it quite a lot and I've got it wrong. So,
well, a lot of this is conventional. So this diagramming method, the first publication that I know that had it in, and I don't think it was initial to that, dates to the early 70s. So I'm sure this method has been in operation with variations before the 70s. And a lot of this is conventional. So somebody managed to establish in standard practice the idea that you use this for non-verbals, this for verbals, half verbals, and this for full verbals when they are subordinate. Now, that's entirely conventional. A lot of what you got wrong, Craig, wasn't so much the big picture, it was just not knowing the conventions. All right, let's do the next one, 11.08 or 11.8. Albertos? Su epiton logon, yes, aan die woord.
It's Mark 3:32 to 35.
Ah, long one. I'm going to have trouble fitting that on my screen. Can we choose the next one then?
Matthew 11:27.
Okay, daar gaan ons. Is it the whole sentence? Mine starts, well, where does it start and end?
Panta moi and
Yeah,
ends
okay.
Orchios. As you've got it.
Orchios. It's the whole sentence. Ends with Orchios apokalypsai. All right. All right, so we can see our first clause at the bottom here. Panta moi par edothe hypo tu patros mu. All things to me, par edothe, were given or entrusted. Hypo, by, tu patros mu, my father. So that's our first sentence. Panta, although it's an adjective technically, there's no adjective, it's modifying, so it's functioning as if it were a noun. It could be nominative or accusative in form, but here it's the subject of the verb paredothe. So when I put these on, you can see this program doesn't quite know what to do with an adjective. If that were a noun in terms of word category, it would have known to put it above the line. Okay, so panta paredothe in the first clause, subject and verb. All things were given or have been given. This is a passive verb, so it might feel like all things is the direct object, but actually because the verb is passive, it doesn't have a direct object. It has a subject that functions much like it were the direct object. All right, there's no direct object. Moi is an indirect object. I'm going to put it thus. We could have used the other way of showing it, but I'm going to put it that way. And hypo is a prepositional phrase, introduces a prepositional phrase. Prepositional phrases modify the verb almost without exception. So I'll diagram it as subordinate to the verb. I put hypo on that, and now the object of the preposition is tu patros. So we put it this way, and mu is a genitive modifying patros. So we have all things, panta, paredothe, have been given, moi, to me, hypo, by, tu patros, the father. Which one? Mine, mu. So that's our first clause. Kai is obviously a conjunction. It's going to link clauses together. Udes epiginoske ton hion me hopater. So let's take Udes is nominative singular, it's clearly the subject, and epiginoske is the verb of a clause. So we've got a second subject-verb combo. Nobody knows, no one knows, Udes epiginoske. Direct object is ton hion, the sun. We can see it's accusative, so it's the direct object. Udes epiginoske ton hion. That's our classical sentence, subject, verb, direct object. Sorry, subject, verb, direct object. Then we have me except hopater. And we're suffering from ellipsis here because the idea is except the Father knows the Son. Right? So no one knows the Father except stands in contrast, so no one except the Father knows the Son. Me is a subordinate, functions as a subordinating conjunction, yeah. And technically we would demonstrate that with one of these. Me, and then hopater is the subject of a clause, and the rest of the clause is missing. So the rest of the clause would be epiginoske, except the Father, epiginoske knows ton hion. Does that make sense? Hope it makes sense. So what we have effectively is the verb missing and the direct object missing. I can show them if I want to, like that. That's a bit confusing, so does everybody follow what I've just done?
No.
Okay, and our conjunction, we typically link to the line. So it goes along the line to show that that conjunction is governing the relationship between this clause and this clause. Okay, this thing puts the two words under one another. Alright, so no one knows the Son, me, except hopater, except the Father, and implied in our sentence is epiginoske ton hion, except the Father knows the Son. Ude, and no one, so it's a coordinating conjunction, ton patera, we're at the bottom here. You'll see the words highlighted as I work through them. And none, and not, ton patera, tis, anyone, epiginoske, me, hohios. So let's take that. That's exactly parallel to this, by the way. So we've got and not, ude, so it's a conjunction. I'll leave it out for now. We're going to run into space constraints here, so we can try and save space by tightening up a few of these elements. Alright, so ude. Tis is nominative, it'll be the subject. Epiginoske is the verb, so they become subject and verb of our next clause. So nobody knows. Ton patera is the direct object. You can see it's accusative, direct object of epiginoske. No one knows the Father. Notice in the original sentence that ton patera, the direct object is moved to the front of the clause, which is likely to emphasize it. It's about the equivalent in English of putting words in italics, moving it forward in its clause sequence. Me hohios, except the Son. So no one knows the Father except the Son, which is exactly parallel to this idea. So we'll do except. Okay, I didn't mean to do that. Let's take off. You can type into these things, by the way. Except hohios. So it's except the son, and still implied is knows the father. So those are elided exactly as they were over here. All right. Kai ho ean buletai hohios. And to whomever. Ho is a relative pronoun. You haven't got to it yet. It's and to whomever ho ean buletai hohios apocalypsai, to reveal him. Quite complicated to diagram, so essentially what it's saying is no one knows the Father except the Son. The implication, the Son knows the Father, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. So what we do is, the moment we have two coordinating elements, we can use this little dude to show them. And by the way, if you need to switch it around, let me just put one on the screen. If you need it to go the other way, you can toggle it using these arrows. Took me a while to figure that out. Okay, so we can toggle this baby. What I want to do is show that this is like a splitter in electronic terms or electrical terms, and it's going to split. No one knows him except, well, except who? Well, two people know him. The Son knows him. Hohios knows him. Let's take that down a bit. And Kai, we can put this on the line. And whomever the Son wishes to reveal him to. Because we haven't done these grammatical elements, it's quite difficult for me to explain how to diagram them. So I'm just going to treat them as one word cluster to show the logic here. Okay, so essentially what we have is no one knows the Father except the Son and to whomever the Son wishes, and I left out a word. I'll just put it on the same line. Apocalypsai, to reveal. The idea is to reveal him. Does that make sense? I'm out of space to diagram the full sentence at the bottom, and you haven't covered some of the word categories, so it's difficult to talk about it. Any questions about that one?
Kevin, what about Ude and Kai?
All right, so they are coordinating conjunctions. They're going to link the two main, or the three main divisions of my sentence together. So I like to show that with a dotted line. There's no hard and fast rule about it, but I find that a useful way of illustrating that they are governed somewhat thus. And then I can just try and make the line look roughly straight. So I would put them there still. All right. Any questions? That's a complicated one. Extremely complicated because we've got ellipsis going on in a few places. We've got MA clauses that are confusing to diagram. The reason that the diagram uses these left to right slanted joiners is because we have at least implied a finite verb in the modifying clause. There would be another way that might be simpler to diagram this, but hopefully that covers it. I think we got time for one more. Happy to take anyone, but 11.09 would be the logical choice, unless you have one you really want me to do, Craig.
Kevin, any of them? I haven't tried to do them on this exercise. I just tried an assignment 2, so I haven't tried any of these.
Perfect. 11.09, somebody give me a reference.
You just did 11.09 because 08 was so long.
Ah, okay, so that's 11.09, so then 11.10.
Kevin, 1110, he's got the reference in brackets. So I think he's altered the sentence a bit.
All right, so then let's go to the next Bible
11
reference, which is not altered.
Genesis 4:17, which is 13. I don't know if you've got Genesis.
Yeah, I should be able to do LXX, so it gives me an option to choose LXX, NA28, SBL, or LXX. SBL is the SBL New Testament, so we should be able to do that. And you said it's Genesis
4:17.
4:17, Eucharisto. Opens it up there. Just tell me how much of the sentence, where does it start and finish in Mounds?
It doesn't look the same at all, Kevin.
It doesn't look the same?
Kevin, the translation is
17.
and he named. The translation is and he named the city after the name of his son Enoch.
So
it's from here. It's Kai ep onomasen ten polin epi to onomati to hu autu enoch. All right. So this is Kai egno, and he knew Cain ten gunaika autu, his wife, Kai sulabusa eteken, she conceived and gave birth, ton enoch to Enoch, Kai ein, etc. And then so he goes and builds a city, oikodomon, Pauline. He was building a city, Kai ep onomasen, and he named ten Pauline epito onomatitu hiu autu enoch. All right. So Kai again is a coordinating conjunction. It's linking the clause that's our focus to the rest of the sentence. I'm just going to leave it out for the purposes of this exercise. There's no subject. This is very common in Greek, of course, because the subject is embedded within the verb. If we made it English, it would be he named, and we would have he as the subject and named as the verb. But both of those elements are encoded in ep onomasen. So what we're going to do, I suggest when you do this, you diagram it like this. Use a direct object marker. Put the subject element here. Come on, play ball with me. All right. And just use an X to show that it's unexpressed in Greek. And then ep onomasen, he named. So we understand the he here, and in context the he is Cain. Enomasen, ten Pauline, direct object, classical sentence structure. The city, epi, is a preposition. Prepositions modify verbs, and they don't have, prepositional phrases don't have verbs in them, but they modify verbs. Put the preposition on the line using the slanted joiner, this one. All right. And then we use a direct object marker for the object of the preposition, which in this case is to onomati, the name. So, ep onomasen ten Pauline, he named the city, epi to onomati, based on the name. To hu, to hu is a genitive modifying onomati, the name, whose name? Of the son. And autu is another genitive, this time modifying son, whose son? Autu, his son. Okay. Enoch is the actual name. So Enoch stands in what is known as a relationship of apposition. This is when two elements, usually nouns, in a sentence are interchangeable. The one simply could be swapped for the other one. Enoch is the name, onomati. He named it after the name. What was the name of his son? Enoch. Apposition is diagrammed using an equal sign to the right or left of the words that are equivalent. All right, so that's our final diagram. Unexpressed subject because it's embedded in the verb. Ep onomasen, he named Tenpolin the city. How did he name it? Epito onomati, on the basis of the name. Tuhiu, of the son. Whose son? Autu, his son. And his son's name was Enoch. Happy? Questions? We got time for one more. Please give it to me. What was this, 11:13 did you say? I think you said it was 11:13.
No, it was 11:13.
Okay, can you give me one more, Estelle? Not too long, something.
I don't have verses.
Oh, okay. Somebody, Craig or Bert, anybody?
Genesis 4:10.
Genesis 4:10. We're living in Genesis for the time being. Okay, so again, we've got to choose LXX to get Genesis. Whole sentence, kai epen ho theos, ti epoiesas phone haimatos tu adelphus su boa, pros me ektes geis. The whole sentence?
Yes, it is.
All right. Kai is our coordinating conjunction, so it would stand loose. I'm not going to diagram it. You know more or less what we do with it. Ho theos is the subject in the nominative case. The verb is apen. So God said. Pretty straightforward. God said, ti epoiesas. Now, there's no, normally, the person to whom God is speaking would be mentioned in Greek in one of two ways. A dative, that is the indirect object. So, for instance, ho theos epen auto, God said to him. The other way that the recipient of speech is commonly marked is using the preposition pros. So, ho theos epen pros auton, God said to him. But in this instance, the recipient of the speech is not mentioned, at least in this verse. We would infer that you know who it is from the preceding context. But that's pretty much all we've got. Ti epoiesas, what have you done? So again, two ways we could do this. What I suggest we do is we put a direct object marker there because the direct speech, what have you done, is functioning in the place of the direct object, but that we'll use this to show that it's not quite there. Okay. And then I would suggest if we take what have you done, epoiesas is the verb. The subject of the verb is unexpressed. It is second person singular, which you haven't learned yet. But it means you. So you have done, and the interrogative, ti, what, it's an interrogative pronoun, but it is grammatically holding the place of a direct object. So I'm going to put it there. So it's literally as a question, you have done what? Ti epoiesas. God continues, so this is the next part of direct speech. Phone, the sound or voice, haimatos, of blood, to adelphus su, of your brother, boa, is crying out, pros me ekteskes. So what we have is a nominative, phone, is the subject, and a verb, boa, is crying out. So I'm going to put those on another baseline. I'll show you now how they fit in. So a voice is crying out. I'm going to need a bit more space to show the subordinates here, so let's move that a little bit like this. So it's the voice. What voice? The voice of blood. Genitive chains, you end up taking them down, 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 down. Voice of blood. Whose blood? Answer. The brother's blood. 2. Adelphu, the blood of the brother. Whose brother? Yours. Su. Okay, so we got the voice. What voice? Voice of blood. Whose blood? The brothers. Whose brothers? Yours. That's kind of how that's working. Okay, we're going to move this to here. Is crying out is our verb. There's no direct object. If you look at that rest of that clause, you're not going to see anything that functions or belongs to the category direct object. Instead, what we have is two prepositional phrases, pros me, ektes geis. So we take the first one. Prepositional phrases modify verbs. Get that locked into your memory. So I'm going to diagram this as modifying the verb, pros, and the object of the preposition we show as if it were a normal direct object. Now where we've got two things both modifying this and on the same level, ektes geis is a second one. This is what you do. You simply put it below the last one. So this line continues, and the object of the second preposition is tes geis. Hotheos apen, what he said is all of this. It's two clauses, and what I suggest we do is that we show there's no coordinating conjunction used here, but we can at least show that the two clauses are equivalent. They are both what God said. So God said, what have you done? This is still God speaking. Next sentence of his speech. The voice of the blood of your brother cries out, pros me to me ektes geis, from the grave. From the earth, sorry. Katalambanete? What number was that, by the way? 1114.
1116.
16.
Okay, 1116. It's quite a tricky skill to master. It's going to look easy when you watch me do it. I've done a lot of this over many years. And like anything, you do a lot. One watches Djokovic play tennis. It looks like a really easy game. It doesn't look hard to hit the ball pretty hard. But when you start trying to do this, you're going to find it's not as easy as I've made it look. Don't be too discouraged when you scratch your head and you're not sure how things fit together. What you're really trying to do is to demonstrate the logical grammatical relationship between parts of speech, what exactly is what in each sentence. And the value of it is that it helps to make clear how the thing is put together. So once I can do this and I can recognize that the sentence starts with Hotheos apen, God said, and we've got two sentences of direct speech. It's pretty easy to see how this flows, and it would be easy to translate it into English because English translation more or less follows this word order. This diagramming is pretty much an English word order thing. So the whole logical flow of the diagram would go from here, from the top left this way. It kind of flows that way when you translate it. Any final questions? Okay, hope it's been helpful. Happy diagramming, happy trying to figure out the things that fit together. Do endorse this tool, BibleArk.com. It's by far the best of its type, free or commercial. There's a Logos version of diagramming technology that's supposed to help you to do the same kind of thing, but it is far less user-friendly and I think less powerful at the moment anyway than this little freebie we have in BibleArk.com, so I endorse that to you. Eucharisto, have a great week.
Thanks, Kevin. This was very interesting. Thank you.
Go well.
Thanks a lot.
Kevin.
Drop me a line
Thank
if
you
you're
very much,
struggling.
Kevin.
if you try a sentence and you're not sure how it fits together,
Thank
please
you
feel
very
free
much, Stephen.
please feel free to post it on the forum, and if I have a moment, I'll provide some guidelines about how to diagram. So you're welcome to ask diagramming questions on the general course forum. I need to go. Got to do school runs and stuff, so bless you guys, man.
Thank you.
Eros there.
Eros there.